Hello, everyone. This is Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. We have a special guest today, Dr. Shauna Young. We're going to be discussing some very interesting topics. Uh, Shauna Young is PhD, CTN, CBS, OSJ, Dr. Shauna Young.
Oh my, and
And-
OMG. So yeah,
oh, wow. Oh, more now. So very good.
I get
And
poked.
to date, she has been involved with, she has a great book, and we're going to be talking about it today. In 2005, after 4 years of clinical observations and experiences, Shauna began specific research regarding her theorized negative effects of excess and stored manganese on the human and neurological and sensory input systems and its possible symptomatic connections to autism and other neurological learning and behavior disorders in both children and adults. The unique success of this clinical research, originally referred to as the Popeye protocol and currently as the Spectrum Balance Protocol, led to her receiving distinguished awards of excellence in both May of 2006 and May of 2007 from the internationally recognized Global Foundation for Integrative Medicine. Shauna holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Natural Sciences and was awarded a PhD in Natural Sciences from the University of Natural Medicine in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Great place. In January of 2008, she was also knighted into the International Sovereign Medical Order of the Knights Hospitaller in recognition of the unique impact of her work with autism and for positively advancing the field of natural medicine in general. Shauna serves as a chief medical advisor for the No Harm Foundation, www.noharmfoundation.org, a Colorado not-for-profit organization formed with the primary goal of releasing this vastly important information with the intent of ushering in a new paradigm in research and providing real help for countless suffering children and adults. So this information up to the date has been used with families living in more than 67 countries. Her very well-reviewed first book, If Neuropaths Are Quacks, Then I Guess I'm a Duck, was published in April of 2012. She is currently an internationally recognized speaker and educator and is working on her third book. So, Shauna, thanks so much. Dr. Shauna, thank you so much for joining us today.
First of all, I have to unfortunately inform you that the No Harm Foundation we had to let go of. We just didn't get enough funding.
Yeah, you've been at this for a while, like we talked about, and unfortunately, you've hit some, roadblocks, and people haven't tried to help you on purpose, and all kind of crazy stuff.
That's one way.
But like I said, and like we've discussed, it is effective protocol, not widely accepted, but effective. You've been around the world. A lot of people have been over 10,000 people. What's the number now?
Who knows?
We incredible, right?
Stopped counting years ago because when we hit 10,000, it was like, okay, so it just got kind of unwieldy at that point. But in terms of that's my whole practice. But in terms of my work with not only with autism, but I'm including the autism spectrum disorders within that, the ASDs, ADD, ADHD, those kinds of things. One of the hardest parts of writing this book was figuring out which case studies to use because, I'm like, okay, I'm going to write the book because I never set out. Let me just say that I never set out to be writing a book about this. Okay, this did not at all go. What do you say? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. It just, So, but here I am. I'm like, okay, I'm going to write a book. So I'm standing in front of my file cabinet in my office that is specifically for the Spectrum Balance Protocol. And it's 5 feet tall and 2 across, right? And it's all spectrum cases. And so I'm thinking, well, how do I pick these? Do I just take just the autism cases or do I, and what I finally did was I tried to pick case studies. There's 26 of them in the book. And I tried to pick them to go across the largest amount of symptoms I could, because some of the symptoms, people think that they're literally the only person in the world that's experiencing them. And so I try to go across as many symptoms as I could for people so that they could catch how broad a range this covers. But some of it was so specific. I changed the names of all the kids in the book, except one. And that's because he's on a TV show with me. So no point there. But these people got spread out. And so many of them, once their children, were no longer needing such constant attention and care, they were able to move and get better jobs and do all kinds of things that they wanted to do. So I lost track of them because they changed phone numbers, they changed emails and stuff. So I wound up just changing all the kids' names in the book because it just became easier. But what I had somebody actually call me and accuse me of using her in the book. And I'm like, you're not that person, but she's like, yeah, this person that you're calling, this name in the book, that's me. And I'm like, it's not. I've never seen you, so I don't know, but it is that specific to some people.
Wow. And so what's interesting about this is we've talked about as I read in your the outline of your book and your background and so forth, is that it's not just for, because I always think of it being for children, autism, but there's a wide spectrum of people that have problems with this. And you talk about I have a video that we can share here in a minute when you're ready, but you talk about how you came upon this from where they were mining for manganese. And all the people that are in there are having all the symptoms that a lot of these kids and adults have right now. Yeah. And so you just found a protocol to overcome the manganese that was like really stuck on their receptors in their cells and so forth, and overcame that with iron and so forth. And if I'm off, just let me know. But it basically, you push out the manganese from the body that's stored up too much and it's causing all these neurological problems, and you have people that have recovery. And we talked about the little boy, we're seeing him in this video. He is, thanks to you, he is now a comedian, whereas before he was putting his head through walls. Yep. It's like crazy. Yeah. Wow.
Came a long way from them having to lock up the knives at night.
Oh, but, that's the one you were talking about, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
He had a lot of issues, but what a sweet kid, and just such a gorgeous kid. The first time I met him, he just looked like this little angelic thing, but he was saying the most awful things. I mean, he was threatening himself and me through the entire thing. And they drove him from Tennessee to Colorado to see me because he was too violent to get on a plane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of, stuff like that. And yes, this does affect with adults, and it affects a wide variety, of issues. But there's a game of musical chairs that's going on, with your receptor sites. And I mean, everything's calcium, all kind of minerals, they share receptor sites in your brain. But iron and manganese, and the reason I'm saying it like that is sometimes people think I'm saying magnesium.
Right.
But no, this is manganese.
Manganese, yeah.
And they share the same receptor sites. And so it's not just a case of putting more iron into the person. You have to start the music of the musical chairs to get the manganese out of the chair, and so that you can put iron in the correct receptor sites.
Yeah, and it was interesting what you were saying is that it's a diet, and if you go back to the old diet, then you get the same symptoms again. So you have to make sure you stay within this certain diet protocol. So
for a while, the diet is, therapeutic. And so, and I always tell people that 99% compliance will get you zero benefit. So it's really, really important that you do 100% compliance until you've reached the results that you want. And then once you're where you want to be, then you can start reintroducing some of these foods. Okay, now, I don't recommend that you ever reintroduce grains, because grains chelate iron. And so that allows the manganese to take the open receptor sites that the iron should be in. So there's some foods that I suggest people never go back to eating. But for the most part, you can. Like the very first child that I worked with, I asked his, and we were not working on his autism, by the way, we were working on digestive issues and skin rashes and stuff. And I asked his mom if he was allergic to anything. And she said, well, he throws up soy and blueberries, any kind of soy product and blueberries. And I thought, well, that's an odd combination. And I looked them up, and they're both very, very high in manganese.
Wow. Wow.
So
yeah.
that was the rabbit hole that started. Yeah.
Do you want to play a portion
Sure.
of that video?
Sure.
I just watched it just before we got together, and I was like, wow, this is really powerful. So let's watch a little piece of this.
Research by Dr. Shauna Young made a big difference for this family and their struggle with autism.
There were no peaceful moments with Nick when he was a baby. Developmentally, at probably about 3 months, we were first evaluated. Some friends would say, I don't think this is quite right, I don't think this is quite right. And he was my 6th child, so I knew. At 3, Nick was hospitalized with meningitis and encephalitis. He lost the ability to do everything except breathe. He started having seizures. He went into a coma there and was in a coma for a little over a week.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, Shauna stumbled across a very interesting article.
So I went on the internet and I finally asked just the right question, and it popped up a really wonderful Weston Price article called Manganese Madness. And this was a situation that started all the way back in prior to 1900, back in the 1880s, where an English physician had actually found local manganese miners that were having all of these weird symptoms. And they were having hallucinations, they were having trouble speaking, they were having trouble keeping their balance and walking, all of these kinds of things. And when I put all these symptoms together, it just sounded a lot like autism.
Nick was hospitalized with meningitis and encephalitis. Then we started having anger issues, screaming and raging. He came home on a seizure medication because of the seizures associated with meningitis and encephalitis. At that point, we were looking at a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. He couldn't sit in a chair and eat his lunch. He stood in the chair and walked in circles while he ate his lunch. He climbed the shelves in the closet.
Nick is very far out of what I usually work with. What I work with usually is more the mainstream of autism and autism spectrum disorders. Sometimes the kids are on a medication or 2 or something like that, but this was so extreme with the 6 medications, with them being antipsychotics. He was very violent at the time, and he was either threatening me or threatening himself pretty much for the whole thing. And when you see that coming out of that angelic little face, it's very scary. But I told his mom, I said, look, I don't know if we can do anything here, but it can't hurt.
We had tried diets before. We had tried a lot of things before. And we were already on a fairly healthy, whole food kind of diet, not a lot of packaged things. We had been gluten-free, casein-free for a long time, and we're used to eating whole foods. So on Monday morning, the foods just changed a little. There were no grains, and so some things were coming out of the house. The neighbors got a lot of free food.
Manganese is not something people think about, and the sources of manganese are the ones that are frightening. Soy, especially baby formulas, vitamins, cereals, especially a lot of children's cereals. They are fortified, it says, fortified with manganese. Why?
Right after Shauna made her discovery, she had a remarkable experience with a young patient.
Iron and manganese take the same receptor sites in your brain. So I thought, well, if his manganese is too high, what if I gave him some iron I wonder what would happen. The child does not like meat that much. He likes vegetables a lot better. So I ran down a whole bunch of high iron vegetables. So we were getting him to eat raw spinach and black cherries and, you know, just some things like that that were high iron. You've been on the diet for 8 days. And I said, is anything different? She says, well, he started talking. And he hadn't spoken since he was 1.5 years old. And he was now approaching 4. And I said, what did he say? And he was eating a spinach salad with both hands. And she said, boy, you're really liking that salad, aren't you? And he says, yeah, I eat it all up.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. So, I mean,
both of us out.
so yeah, that's pretty incredible. So it's amazing, that he had that response so quickly. After just a few days, it seems like, and now he's speaking again. And
Well,
is that why they call it the Popeye protocol? Because there's a lot of spinach involved.
Spinach, yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
It was my original thing because see, I started down this research the same day that he came in. So because that's the first time I had ever noticed this iron and manganese imbalance in anybody. And so I thought, well, I wonder what that does. And that's when I started looking and I found the Manganese Madness and I found the Western Price article and I found some other articles from Francis Cornella, who was doing research into juvenile prisons with violent behaviors. And he was talking about manganese and, this stuff. And so I just did this really super fast search of things and called her, and she was kind of like, it was 8:30 at night. She was kind of like, okay, so we just started. I mean, it was very kind of casual at first. I had no idea what was going to become the ramifications of this, but that was pretty much, I think, the seminal moment of my life, changing. I even in the book right here, you can kind of see in the little thing right here, I wrote, this is a copy of his intake. And I'd made a bunch of notes, and right down way in the corner, I wrote manganese with a question mark. And that was the beginning of all of this.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now he's a comedian.
No, the different kid.
Oh,
Nikki,
different kid. Okay.
the one that you just saw, Nikki, he's the one that does the stand-up comedy. He's the kid
Stand-up
is he's
Okay.
he's quite something. When I hadn't seen Nick in a little while when I went to their house. I went to their house in Tennessee to do that EchoSense show, and he answered the door. And I said, hey, Nikki. And I said, do you remember me? And he goes, we talk about you all the time, and just that eye roll was so, it made me just like want to cry, because it was just that, it was so kid, you know what I mean? Just that eye roll, and sometimes when the kids just start acting like kids, it just makes you so happy. I've heard so many people tell me that. The one that I was discussing, the first one, was actually 3 years old when I first met him. He was just shy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It does work usually a lot faster. I mean, just think about the smaller the space that you need to work with, the easier,
Yeah.
Now
you're telling me about this one family. We're helping one person, but everybody started on the diet and they all had all kinds of problems and they all had relief. That's wild.
Yeah. We started hearing a range of things. They were like, my husband, he's like, always his back always hurts, his knees always hurt and stuff. And he said he's not in any pain anymore. Does that happen? And it's usually my husband, because the wives are doing the predominance of the shopping and cooking. Sorry, guys, but it's true. And, my husband lost 40 pounds, my husband, this is happening. This is happening. And I was like, really? Because you got to realize this was very early on to the paleo idea, of grains and all that. I started this back in 2005. So this is, something that we were still discovering. There wasn't a lot of research. There wasn't a lot of, but people, they started to notice all kinds of things. And it is not unusual. I can clearly recall a family that I worked with an autistic child where the mother was I'm trying. She was diagnosed depression, and the father was diagnosed as bipolar.
Wow.
And it's because they were all eating the same food. You know, they were
Mhm.
all eating the same stuff. So it's really not unusual at all for me to see multiple symptoms through the family. That has been one of the stumbling blocks to the protocol from time to time, because sometimes just the idea of changing diet or having to cook something that didn't come out of a box, or that you didn't drive through a box for, or something like that, is very overwhelming to the parents, because the parents are dealing with their own manganese situations.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you said you've dealt with this obviously for a very long time. Unfortunately, you would think at this point it'd have a lot of traction. There's a lot of territorial stuff out there. People they have their little
The answer.
yeah, they have their answer and they don't want anything to get involved in that, even if their answer is not really getting good results.
Exactly.
Maybe some results here and there, and they're like, okay, we got it. And that's human nature. You want the thing, and then
Mhm.
once you feel you have the thing, then you're like, nothing else is good. And
Yeah.
I've encountered that a lot with like alpha males, in my line of work. But it is, when you get enough evidence, at some point, you would think there would be a tide that would go in the right direction. Now, I know you've handed this over to Robert F. Kennedy, and hopefully he gets a view of it, because it's been quite some time, and it should have more, like I said, traction. Of course, there's lots of other modalities out there, but this is very, very effective for a lot
Well,
of people.
there's a lot of people that are I was shocked when you asked me to do the podcast, and I did some Googling on myself. I was shocked
Mm.
because there's a lot of things out there. I did this. This is actually part of my PhD thesis, and this
Wow.
was downloadable on somebody's website. I don't even have any idea who they are.
Hmm.
I mean, they gave me credit, which was awfully nice of them, because some
Very good.
people,
Yeah.
but she did. And but and other people, of course, have tried to take this over. I was handed a copy of my own diet that was a photocopy of my diet with the name changed to a person's name's protocol. And I was like, this is my, so I know the guy, and I called him, and I'm like, what's going on here? I just got handed this that's got your name on it.
Oh,
Yeah. And he was like, oh, and then he started this whole thing, of an autism center, for all this stuff. And then he just threw the diet away because the autism center doesn't work if the kids aren't autistic anymore. And
oh,
that, everything you look at in terms
mm,
of ASDs, they're looking at mitigating the symptoms. They're looking at treatment. They're looking at how do we make them more comfortable, or how do we,
right.
ABA therapy, let's teach them how to stack a block on top and then give them an M&M when they do it right, and all these things. And that's not my direction. I'm not trying to help this. I'm trying to get rid of why it's happening in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's a very unusual concept, for people have a very difficult time. I still, to this day, I get all these phone calls of people going, oh, you should refer people to me because I do horseback riding for autistic kids. And I'm like, yeah, but the kids I work with aren't autistic anymore. They're like missing that, one of
Yes.
the kids I worked with, and I love this kid. And he wanted desperately to do well in school. And he was 8 years old, and he got into behavioral issues out of frustration more than anything else. And he told his mom that he couldn't concentrate because it was so noisy. He just couldn't handle it. And so his mom goes to the school, and she said you could hear a pin drop. I mean, but even the ticking of the clock, all these things was bothering him so badly that he couldn't concentrate. And that's what the high manganese does, is it causes sensory overload.
Ah,
So light is too bright, sound is too loud, all of this. And so it interferes with their processing. Manganese was meant to store information. It's in cassette tapes, it's in things like that, where iron is meant to conduct information, where they put it into wiring and things like that. So it's kind of like the information comes in and then gets stuck, where it makes everything too much.
That's an excellent description. Yeah, very good.
Yeah. One of the metaphors that I came up with is like you and I are having this conversation, right? But there's 10 television sets going, there's 10 radios going, there's, all this information. So one person, same input, okay, 3 different people, but the exact same input. So one person says, well, I like baseball, so I'm going to go each time baseball, 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 baseball. Okay. Another person is going to say, I can't stand all the noise. I'm going to concentrate on this one set, and I'm going to become the world's expert on what's on this screen in front of me. A third person says, not dealing with this. Too much. Nope. Okay. So same input, but you've got ADD, Asperger's, and autism right there. So the high manganese causes the same input, and then the personality of the person determines how the symptoms progress.
So in your book, you basically have you have great information in your book, which basically is showing what foods to avoid and which foods to eat. It looks like an incredible, great diet. A lot of these foods I eat. Some of them I'll probably start to avoid now that I'm looking at them. But
just for fun.
When I do bodybuilding contests, almost this diet is very similar. I'm cutting out all grains and all of the stuff that basically makes us smooth, and so I can get lean. And so it's interesting, the fact, because I know that if I'm drinking certain things, if I'm eating certain things, it's going to smooth my physique out. But if I take them out, I get nice and lean. I get real focused. I do great. Everything's going great. But then you want to go back and, like you said, you can start to filter back other foods in. But if you're having issues with your neurons not firing correctly, you would think that, okay, I'll definitely make sure I'm not doing these anymore if that's really causing the problems.
What happens once the balance is created between the iron and manganese, then it becomes almost a little bit difficult to knock it back off again. It's not like you can eat one bad meal and that's not it. Okay, because once the balance is achieved, the balance has a tendency to want to stay there. It's when you repeat offend. I had somebody that got her voices in her head back because she was eating bran muffins, and she was eating one on Sunday and it was fine. So she thought, well, I'll have one Sunday and Tuesday, and then Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday, and then 2 on Sunday, and then all of a sudden her symptoms started creeping back. But it wasn't overnight, and it took a while. I did have one kid. He's from Alabama, and he proposed to me, by the way. So I'm still looking for him. Yeah. He was 6. I should probably call him. Anyway, but he was out, and he went through the protocol, and he did very well. So about a year later, his mother calls me. She's freaking out. And he ate one of the foods that's really high manganese is pineapple. So he'd been off these foods for a long time. His sister, who was a little bit older, won a contest at school, and it was a big, huge bag of crystallized pineapple. And she won it. She gave it to him.
Ooh.
The whole bag.
Yeah.
Like half a pound of crystallized pineapple.
Yeah.
His mom said he went right back to square one. He was screaming. He was nonverbal. He was wetting his pants. He was, she put him in his room just because she didn't want him to hurt himself. And she said, what's going to happen? I said, I don't know, because I've never, seen this before. So she gets up the next morning, she goes in, he's sitting on the bed. And she said, he's shaking his head like he's got water in his ears. He's just kind of doing that. And she said, honey, are you okay? And he goes, I am never eating pineapple again. And he was fine. But
he knew what it was. That's good.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. He was like, okay, done with that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's like
Oh,
when you drink too much and you're like, I'm not going to drink ever again. Yeah.
exactly. Done with that. And it's really funny because the parents, a lot of times the kids are the ones that are really adherent to this. Where, a lot of times the parents will say, oh, I'm sure you can have this now, and I'm sure you can have that now. And they're like, I don't want it. The kid that I told you about that really wanted to do good in school, he did great in school. He graduated college. He got a scholarship to MIT. He's doing all these things, right? So the last time I saw him, he definitely needed a shave. And I said, so you just graduated from college? I said, I got to ask. And he goes, well, I was college. He goes, so there was a certain amount of pizza and beer that was involved, And
Yeah.
he said, but really, honestly, he said, I just don't have much of a desire for it because I saw what it did to me before.
Yeah.
And he said, I really have no desire to go back that direction. So he said,
Good.
it's real easy for me to say no to things. So they
Yeah.
self-regulate. Mhm.
So in your book, it's in the right on the cover, it shows us how the autism is increasing. There's a lot of people have been talking about this. So the protocol that you have could probably, how much do you think, there's, like we said, there's other, modalities out there. Yours is very effective. Have you ever seen anyone that does not have results from it?
Okay, first of all, it's hard to say because when I
Sure.
had the No Harm Foundation, we downloaded over 150,000 copies of that protocol in 60 countries. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and then the book, of course, there's many thousands of those out there. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that have tried it. But in my experience, if somebody has high manganese and they are 100% on the diet, yes, they get changed.
Hmm.
So, and a lot of times it's subtle things too. My sister-in-law's example, if her manganese gets high, she has trouble reading a little bit. She said that the words seem to jump around on the page. So but then because the symptoms are just very, very different, in different people. And that was why I wrote the book the way I did. I was trying to cover as many varieties of symptom as I could get to.
It's amazing how diet can affect us, this significantly, and how most people are like, they don't want to hear it. Like you were telling me about, people that were like, oh, well, I don't want it then. It's like, what? Are you
I'll
kidding
do
me?
anything to help my child. Okay, stop eating bread. Oh, not that. Yeah. So,
Oh.
it's very, it's funny. I was watching a TV show the other night, and this woman, she said, it's about preachers and doctors. And she said, we're always telling people not to do things they already know are bad for them. And I thought that's so funny because it became after a long time because my brother was really helpful in me getting this protocol together. He helped me a lot in finding the foods and doing, because I was in full-time practice with all this,
Wow.
so, doing all of this. So we were getting all this together, and he said, do you ever feel like we're selling a product nobody wants, and that's, it's, people don't want to be told not to do what they want to do. I had a patient that smoked half pack of cigarettes a day. And then she'd say, I don't know why I can't get rid of this cough. And I'm like, you smoke. And she goes, yeah, but that's not it. And that's the attitude of people, it's not that, you talk to people about grains. Well, people have been eating grains for a million years, not like we do now. Okay. So, there's a lot of change and a lot of differences that you have to look at. And besides, it's also a matter of sensitivity. I mean, I always call it peanuts. Some people can eat handfuls and handfuls of peanuts and they're just fine. Other people sit next to a peanut and they wind up in the emergency room. I had a to me, funny, because it didn't happen to me, a person tell me they got a bad enough reaction they had to go to the emergency room because they were sitting on a car seat that had peanut shells on it.
Wow.
So it's not the amount that's in your system, because people very often will send me emails or talk to me when I'm lecturing or something, and they say, well, how do I get the manganese tested? How do I figure out the manganese? And I'm like, why bother? I mean, if you get a test, it's going to tell you how much is there, but it's not going to tell you whether you're sensitive to it. So we're talking about something that is food. We're talking about something that the biggest downside is that it doesn't work, right? You know, if your magnesium is high, then it's not going to change anything. But that's the worst case scenario. You're going to eat a healthy diet and have that happen. There's no downside. So I always encourage people to just try it. Just commit to it, you know, for a few months and just, you know, see what happens, because you're going to feel better. You know, everybody in the family is kind of probably going to lose a little weight. You know, some, you know, habits are going to change and all of that. So there's no reason to not just try it.
Now,
And
so because you have such outstanding results, and we probably challenge a lot of systems out there, but do you ever have problems with them coming at you? And I see you have this, you know, this little legal part in your book. This book is offered for informational, educational, entertainment purposes only, as Dr. Shauna Young is not a medical MD doctor. She does not give out what is legally referred to as medical advice. If you have any known medical conditions, please consult with your doctor before making any significant changes in your diet, supplementation, medications, exercise, or the lifestyle aspect. So now that we've done that and we've made that
distinction.
statement, yeah, maybe this video will be able to live here on YouTube, but I hopefully, you know, because
They don't know.
we have had a lot of you know, pushback
Actually.
on during the COVID craziness, but this is you've had a lot of pushback from a lot of different people, and you've told me some of these people like are very high end, you know, former Playboys, centerfolds, and all kind of crazy stuff, and people can make the association there, but you've had them you know, call security on you and carry you away because you're
Yep.
like, you know, coming in with, why don't you do this? And they're like, get out of here. So
And the thing
that's
is, I was being respectful, Michael. It's not like I was in their face, you know. I had a DVD and had 4 or 5 kids that were talking about their experience with the protocol. And all I was saying is, I'd like you to watch this. You know, it's not like I was coming in and whacking them with a, you know, pig bladder or something. You know, it was like I was being very nice and very respectful. But again, you realize at some point that you are working with a product that people don't want for one reason or another. Right up the top of this, I was saying it was never my intention to write this book. Here's how dumb I am. I thought, oh, I have this protocol. I've been using it for several years. It's working really great. So I'll just give it to everybody. You know, I'll just give it to all the autism organizations, and I'll give it to, you know, speech therapists, and I'll give it to everybody, and they'll just do it, and then it'll be all great and everything. Wow, did that not happen?
wow,
I mean,
that's crazy.
No, I was stepping in the swamp, you know, when all I was trying to do was give things away for free. When we were at the LifeWave convention in October. So I've got this gal, she's a brand partner that we were working with and stuff, and she saw my book. She like lost her, you know, thing over it, and she was like, oh, one of my best friends works with autistic children. I got to text her right now. And I said, you might want to hold off on that because she's going to have a particular response, you know? And she goes, no, she's really, really open-minded. She's really awesome, right? She'll be great. So she grabs her phone, she texts her. And within a very few minutes back, she had, you know, I don't need any information from this person. If this person who is and she puts doctor in quotes, if this person who's a doctor thinks there's anything wrong with autism that should be changed, then she's the one that needs to be changed. And, you know, she's obviously a horrible person and whatever. So she was very shocked, you know, that this friend came back with this response. I was not, because people have to understand, I'm not saying number one, if you are experiencing autism and you want to do that, then don't do the diet. I'm not coming to your house and force feeding you hamburgers and sweet potatoes. You know what I mean? So it's if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But I equate it to somebody having, say, a broken arm. Okay. So let's say your kid breaks his arm. Do you take the kid to the doctor and put a cast on the arm, or do you just say, oh, my child is perfect the way he is? So the kids, the thing is that as much trouble as I got into with the parents, I just kept feeling like I had to advocate for the child, because the kids are my patient, and I will always advocate for my patient, even if I have to fight with their parents, or their family or whoever. And so the kids want to grow up. They want to change. The parents, we've gotten into this culture of saying, oh, everything's great and everybody's great the way they are. If we look, I'll step into the weight area for a while, where when somebody that's 100 pounds overweight, I'm not thinking to myself, boy, I bet they don't look good in a bathing suit. I'm thinking to myself, wow, I bet their knees and their feet are suffering like crazy. I'll bet their blood sugar is terrible. I wonder if they have trouble breathing when they lay down at night. That's where my mind goes. So instead of being, well, everything's perfect the way it is, I mean, what about biohacking and optimizing and creating protocols? You work out, we eat well, we do these things. So what is different about this? Everybody, people, and the thing is, this is a choice. Okay. This is not a mandated diet. If you want to try this, fantastic. If you don't, that's fine too. But the kids tell me how much better their life is. The kid I told you about, the classroom being too noisy, he was ecstatic. He said, exactly, this video might be floating around out there somewhere. It's called Again Outside the Box. And he was the one that coined the phrase. He said, it's like when I did this, it was like a box burst open and I came out of it. And some of my kids are out there painting. I had one that did a gallery showing when she was still in her 20s, a gallery in Santa Fe. Okay, so I have one going to NASA. I have kids going to MIT. They're all doing these wonderful things, but they have friends and social skills, and they're doing what they choose to do as opposed to what they are compelled to do.
Right. And you've had parents that said, my child doesn't have any problems. They're good. And then you ask the child, and the child's like, yeah, I'd like to do something about this. So that's very frustrating. It's got to be you're advocating for your children, and sometimes the parents they're into the illness because they get recognition, because they get sympathy. And have you seen a lot of? I'm sure you have. Have you seen a lot of that?
Oh man, I went to the most miserable autism conference in the world. I have a pretty high tolerance for stuff, but this was like
BS. Yeah.
So, oh my God. So I go out to Anaheim, and the keynote speaker comes out, and everybody's got their hair cut like her. First of all, the entire audience is wearing her haircut. I was like, okay, this is a little step for me. But so she gets up and she goes, before we even start, let me just say that you are the most wonderful, perfect people. You're warriors, and you're the best people in the world because you are the parents of an autistic child. And they give her a standing ovation. I was like, what? And that was kind of my first exposure to that level of Munchausen. It's like, I was seeing it here and there in my practice because I specialize in all kind of crazy things. And so I'd seen that kind of attitude, like you said, people giving, help or giving, all these things for people, but I'd never seen the amount of it until I started working with autism.
Yeah.
And I need them to listen to the child's voice. And if the child says, I'm fine, I'm cool, everything's good, then, Yeah. But they don't, a lot of them, for one thing, people don't understand with high manganese, you get nightmares that are really nuts. And like, I've had 4-year-olds tell me dreams they had that gave me bad dreams. I mean, these kids are experiencing things. They're a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6-year-old child is not articulate enough to explain to their parents what they're experiencing. They're not articulate enough, "Oh, mater, dear, I have paranoia." They're not articulate enough. And they don't know because they've experiencing this their whole life. As you saw in the video with Nikki, the symptoms start occurring at 3 months old. So for him, that's just how his life is. And so he doesn't even know, to say that anything's wrong.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, exactly. Good point. Now, you said in that video too, that they put manganese in cereals for children, and you're like, why? And are they just completely clueless, or is there something going on there?
Well, manganese had a reputation as being a brain mineral,
Oh,
and
okay.
so when you see something about brain, or whatever, then
Definitely a brain mineral. Yeah.
right, then people think it's a good idea. But see, manganese is a trace mineral, and you really don't need any more than that trace. And people are realizing this now, because I used to have to dig like crazy to find a prenatal vitamin that didn't have manganese in it, and now there's a whole bunch of them. So this is something that is starting to get known. But it was really good that I did this protocol when I did. I mean, talk about divine intervention, because we were using government websites to get the nutritional information. And it's loaded with manganese or teething biscuits.
Wow.
And yeah. And so soy, baby formulas and all these things.
All in it. Yeah.
So I could go on the website and it would say it had 2 or 3 milligrams of manganese in it, and I'd be like, whoa, okay. Now, shortly after that, we had just gotten the protocol put together. I mean, just gotten it done. And then we were like, wait a second, this is weird, because instead of the amount of manganese, they had this little tilde thing, like this little thing, this symbol. So we looked up the symbol, and it said that meant that that was in the product, but they weren't disclosing the amount.
God. Wow.
So why would you do that?
So there's a problem there, and if people are starting to search their food source, and they don't want that in there, then it's like just a little symbol, and it is in there, and you don't know what the symbol is, so you just move on and use it anyway. Wow.
Right. It's just a little empty, little empty spot.
So, we're talking about how this is for people that are, challenged, but could this actually help everyone? How many people do you think are having symptoms of too much manganese in their diet?
That's kind of a funny question, because you know how it is, like if you go buy a particular car, then all of a sudden you notice that all the cars on the road that are the same,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and you have a tendency to kind of do that. So sometimes I wonder if that's what I'm doing. But I will see somebody behaving erratically on the internet, or having like no filter, because that's another thing. This happens is no filter, they just, whatever comes right out. And I think that guy needs his manganese looked at, or I wonder if and it actually makes me kind of paranoid sometimes, because I've seen what happens with people when their manganese is high. And obviously an adult has a lot more self-regulating than a child. A child just throws himself on the floor at Walmart and,
Sure.
has a tantrum. The adult still has to go to work, and he still has to do all those things. But I really wonder. And to myself, I eat protocol. So it's just, to me, I think that I just want to really hang on to that. And I mean, it's a really healthy diet. This is not,
Yeah.
we're not talking.
I'm looking at it, it's like, wow, maybe you could just change the name and it could be something else.
Just be something else.
I've done my diet. Of course, I had exceptional results with it, with bodybuilding, and I've turned a lot of people onto it. I remember I was in Pakistan, and I had a buddy, SEAL Team 6 buddy of mine. We were like eating breakfast, and we do breakfast, and we go out and do our moves and all that kind of stuff, we did in combat zones. But he was complaining. He was like, I've always wanted to like lean down. I've never been able to do it. And I was like, oh, really? And I said, well, I'll give you a diet where you can do that. And so he did the diet. And then the next thing I know, he's on a billboard in underwear there in Pakistan. Huge billboard of him. Of course, he was leaving because he knew that once he's out in the open, it's like you can't work for us anymore. But it's these diets are very very helpful, and your diet I think is exceptional on many
it's
different
always
levels.
funny to me when somebody says, when I eat well, it's amazing how much better I feel. It's kind of like saying,
Yeah,
when I put gas in my car, it just runs so much better. It's the kind of like an odd, comment to say that when you put good fuel into your body that it runs better.
yeah,
But people like you even said, it's amazing how far-reaching diet is in our
yeah,
world.
yeah.
But look at the meteoric rise of autism. Okay. And the only thing that can be now, I am not discounting other factors. There are many other factors: heavy metals, plastics, vaccines. There's a million of, our world is toxic. Okay. So I'm certainly not saying that this is the only thing. But when we look at just, I'm from Southern California originally, and I went to massively large elementary school, 50, 60 kids in a classroom. And our special needs, which encompassed autism, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, was a Quonset hut. There was like 10 kids, And so why now? I mean, if you talk to any elementary school teacher or even high school teacher, they will tell you that most of their class is behaving in an ADD type of fashion. That a lot of what they're doing is having to ride herd on a class as opposed to like really teaching. So what is that? And people a lot of times will say, well, there's no autism among the Amish or the Mennonites or whatever. Guess what? There is, because I've seen them. I've had Amish and Mennonite kids that I worked with.
Good point. Yeah, how about that?
And those guys eat cleaner than clean. It's just that they eat grains and they eat,
Yeah,
but also too, it's not just in our food or vitamins, because hopefully this video will get people looking at the label, because multivitamins and prenatal vitamins are notorious for this. But it's also when they unleaded gasoline, they put manganese in. So we started to find higher levels of autism in extremely congested cities like Chicago, like Beijing, like all these things, because the gas fumes from the cars were settling down into the groundwater and they were getting manganese up through the groundwater. So it's not like it's hard to get manganese. It's not hard to get excess manganese. So, yeah.
And you mentioned, because a lot of people think it's from vaccines, but it's not completely. But there are many different things that will bring it on.
Yeah.
I know that there's been a big push, and I know RFK Jr. Initially was pushing that, and then he backed off. Maybe he saw your book and saw that, hey, it's not just the vaccines that are causing this problem.
Is there one cause for anything?
No.
No. It's when I was still living in Durango, which is a small town, and it was hard to go out to dinner or something because people would come up and go, "Can I ask you one quick question?" And that was always like the bane of my life, that somebody would be asking me one quick question, because it always turned into a million.
And then it turns into like 2-hour conversation. Yeah.
But it would be, somebody would say, "What do you do for headaches?" Well, what's causing the headache? Are you dehydrated? Do you have constipation? Are you allergic to something? Are you sleeping well? Do you have a sinus infection? So like there's no one cause for anything. And so, but you have to be willing to investigate the fact that there might be multiple causes, that there might be more than one thing.
Yeah, I would think the diet protocol is really probably one of the easiest things you could do, and you get, if it works, you're going to get results. And like you were saying, well, do I what test do I take? Maybe for me it's going to be this much is going to make me have problems, and for you it's going to be this much. And so it doesn't make any sense that people would ask that, but they're going to, they don't know. So that's why shows like this are awesome. Now, you've also talked about how you would like to get, because you self-published, like I've self-published. So that sometimes that's the only way you get your information out there. But it would be to your benefit and probably for the world if you got a publisher. So you're open to that, right?
Yes, I have been seeking publishers, but again, excuse me, I just turned a assertive wellness center, which I was in for 25 years, sitting behind a desk, all day, every day, to doing telemedicine only 6 months ago. So my telemedicine practice is brand new, but now I have a little bit more free time, to be able to seek a publisher or to be able to do things like that. But still, everywhere you go, you're firewalled, and you can't blame people. You're firewalled. I'm firewalled. Everybody is firewalled because there's so many high manganese people out there. Sorry. But it's, so you have to be really careful as to who you're talking to or what information, is getting out there and those kinds of things. So it's very hard to just send a book to a publisher. I spent an enormous amount of my own money on PR agencies and, trying to get publishers and trying to get things like that. But then I finally realized, you know what? I'm not really holding the wheel here. This was given to me through a divine, intervention of question. I mean, look at number one, why would that one thing chase me down this road? Why was I able to put the diet together just before they started putting those tildes in? I mean, I'm talking, it was not a month after I finished the initial protocol that those tildes started showing up. So everything has been in this timing. And I spent all my money, my time, and a lot of, mental and, things like that. And finally realized that I needed to keep doing it, but to not let it consume me. So here's the thing. Do you know who Ignaz Schimmelweis is? Yeah, I didn't either. And I woke up one morning, Ignaz Schimmelweis, and I'm like, what does that mean? So went to the internet, did a search. Dr. Schimmelweis is the doctor who found out that if you washed your hands before you did surgery, that less people got infections and less people died. Okay. And he told this to his colleagues and nobody bought it. And he wound up in several nervous breakdowns, wound up in a mental institution, died in an asylum because the knowledge.
Now I remember the story. Wow, that's crazy.
The knowledge that he had was making him nuts. And I thought, okay, no, I'm not going there.
Yeah, I'm not going crazy. Yeah, no, I'm not going to a mental institution. Good for you.
Not today.
Yeah. There's other things. And one of the ways we met, which is fantastic, is beautiful, and I'm glad we did, was through LifeWave. And you've talked about how, although you have the diet protocol, but you would also add LifeWave. But tell us about that. Why would you do that?
Honestly, I think that any health practitioner that's not using LifeWave is doing themselves and their patients a disservice because as a medical practitioner, what you want is the best possible outcome in the best period of time.
Fantastic.
And so if you want to do that, then you should be doing this. I mean, my dog wears an X39. I think everybody.
Happy dog too. Wandering around back there, wagging his tail.
Yeah, I know she's sorry, but I tell Robin all the time. I would love to. My fantasy would just be getting a helicopter and just rain down X39 patches on people. It just throw them. You get X39, you get X39.
Well, you know how that works. You give it away, and no one. It sits on the counter or whatever, and no one
value it.
Yeah, they don't value it.
This is what happened with my protocol because we had the No Harm Foundation.
Yeah.
And we were allowing the protocol to be downloaded for free. Yeah. So, and then we said, here's the deal. So I said, I will let you have the protocol, you use it. And when your child is better, then you give us money to keep the foundation going. And they did the download part. They did the get the kid better part. They send me lots and lots and lots of letters, telling me how fabulous everything was. But what they didn't send was money. So, we eventually, as I said, had to let go of it simply because we couldn't afford, to keep it. But I think that giving the protocol away for free, I think, was probably not the right thing to do.
On
Looking back,
hindsight, yeah.
hindsight. But the other thing, though, too, is that the simplicity of the protocol sometimes hangs people up. They want it to be harder. I almost feel like maybe I should throw something in there, like, you have to eat a, live mouse or something. I don't know, something hard, because, I know I have a dark sense of humor, Michael. That's how I keep out of the mental institution.
Yeah,
But
I understand it because I've been around that
you
for
got to
all my
climb
life.
a mountain too when you do
Dark
this.
humor, yeah.
But it's like, people are like, okay, so all you do then is eat these foods.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that can't be. It can't be that easy.
Okay. So, and they also are like, well, if this works, then how come you're not on these talk shows, And, this tells you how long I've been doing it. People used to say, well, you should go on Oprah. And I'm like, cool. Do you have her phone number?
And tell her what I'm going to talk about and see how far that goes.
But it's like, how do you get through firewalls? It's not that easy.
Yeah.
So I made the decision to write the book. My first book, If Naturopaths Are Quacks, and I guess I'm a duck. I've currently got off the market right now because I'm making revisions to it again, but I do plan to republish.
Oh, nice.
But Erasing Autism, I made the decision to leave it out there and to let people make of it what they will. Okay. But I will tell you, I do get royalty checks every month. So there's people they're looking at it,
Yeah, good.
there's change, there's things happening, and it will happen when it's supposed to happen. But it's, and in the meantime, like I said, I love working with LifeWave. I work with my practice. I'm still doing all my mystery illness, working with people, doing all of that. And it's so, and the mystery illness and the autism specialties are so related to each other, because medicine was supposed to be an art and a science, and they've lost the art part. Like, one of the things that I most heavily tell people that they need to look at in their health, it's very simple. It's that they don't have enough blood. Their blood volume's low, and it's super common. But there's no test for it. So it's not getting diagnosed because there's no medical test for it. And they're not because, see, I'm not using the testing part. I'm using the art part, 25 years of experience and, looking at all of these different things. And I use my intuition, I have medical intuition and all of these things. And so often it's such a small thing. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, why is this so prevalent? And the thing is, it always has been. It's just that it used to get diagnosed. You used to go to your doctor and you'd say, oh, I've got all these symptoms. And they'd say, oh, well, let's give you some Geritol. Let's tired blood, right? I mean, Geritol sponsored Betty White's show. Everybody used to take it, and it was for tired blood, they called it. And so, but that's what a lot of people are still suffering from, but there's no medical test. There's no sheet of paper that you get with H's and L's on it. And it's just like anything, and people are so technical. I've had people, they work with the protocol, their child starts getting better, they get them tested and they go, well, the test didn't say they had high manganese. And I'm like, the protocol worked. What do you care what the test says?
Yeah. Come on.
What is it? What? For me, I'm all about result. And it's about getting result. And when you do this, I mean, the littler the child and the less severe the symptoms, obviously, the faster. But this is result. And this is, when I've had people keep track of things, and the chart goes,
Wow.
of what they're able to do.
And then you have all those testimonials, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands probably out there that could, give a testimonial how effective it was, and their lives are better and they go on and lead great lives, but they're not, revealing they're not Oprah Winfrey, revealing I did this protocol. So it's not going to come at this point to everybody, and everybody's going to think that if
Well,
my doctor doesn't know anything about it, it must not be that good.
exactly. Someone would have told us about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and a lot of people, you just hit on an interesting point, because a lot of people act like, I always say, look, this is an ASD, not an STD. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But
Right.
a lot of people, they want to leave that so far in the past with their kids. And the most extreme I can think about, I had this kid, and boy, she was 7, and she was just, violent. Oh, oof. And she had, in addition to her autism symptoms, she also had the obsessive compulsive behaviors and oppositional defiance disorder. And, so a couple years later, after she'd been through the protocol, she came in, her sister had a sore throat, and I was working with her sister. And she was laying on the floor on her stomach, and she was coloring, and she had her feet in the air, and she was kind of humming, And I said to her mom, I said, boy, she's sure a different kid, huh? And her mom goes, what do you mean? I said, what do you mean? What do I mean? I said, 2 years ago, she tried to put my eye out with my own scissors. And she's like, what? And I said, how can you forget? And I said, we were sitting at this desk. I have used to have a pencil case that had, pens and pencils and a pair of scissors in it. She grabbed that and threw it at my face so fast. I turned, and the scissors, I've still got a little scar, but the scissors got me like right below my eye. And I'm like, how can you forget that happened? And she's like, no, that was a different kid, And it's like the denial is so deep, they just want to. And that's been part of the problem too, because again, when I was doing the book, and I've had several documentary films get started about this work.
Yeah.
But it becomes very difficult because the people don't want to talk about that. They don't, there's a lot of after footage, but there's not a lot of before footage. And the film companies were all like, well, we need before, So I'm talking to my autism parents, and I said, we need more before footage. And they're like, do you have kids? And I said, no, two-legged ones. And they're like, okay. Your child, your 7-year-old throwing a loaded diaper onto the Thanksgiving turkey is not something you want to commit to film. Just saying, And, your child throwing a temper tantrum, doing all these things. In the case of Nicky that you saw in the film, throwing his head through hardwall, through drywall, this is not something you want to commit to film.
Yeah. Which, you would think that there would be, I would have been like, geez, this could help other people. Yeah, I want to help. I went through this, and your protocol helped me. God, I'd be like, what do I sign? What do I do? It's like, why aren't there more people like that?
I don't know. I think that a lot of it is denial. That, again, they want to pretend it never happened. I think a lot of it is, I know that personally for me, there are a lot of people who went through my protocol and did complete recovery and then attributed it to something else, some therapy they did, or, something like that, because they are either financially profiting from it or, something in that range. Yeah. But a lot of it, like you said, people, they just want to move along. They don't, the desire to help people is very strong in some people, but not most people, I think. And like whoever this person is, I just like to thank them. That's got my PhD thesis up on, their webpage. And all of these are people, but they didn't contact me. So I don't know how many people are out there doing that. I do get these fabulous emails and phone calls from people once in a while where, somebody will say, my daughter's getting married next Thursday, and she wouldn't be if she hadn't gone through your protocol. Or I got a really good one from England. The guy said, if I put my kid through your protocol again, will it make him not want to be a musician? Because he's like, the kid did the protocol when he was 4, and then when he was 14, he wanted to start a band, and he was like, oh my God, I wish there was a dietary protocol to make him not want to be a musician. But, and also too, I do want to mention that there is also a very side note of, there's a real big difference between kid behavior and autistic behavior. And sometimes parents don't want to go there. I had, especially, there are a lot of older parents that have adopted children from the Ukraine or from various places like that. And they just don't have the energy to handle a 10-year-old. So I have had kids go through the protocol and do very, very well, and then get calls from the parents later saying, well, they're regressing, because he wants to get dirty all the time. And he wants to roll down the hill in the back of the house. And my favorite, he won't sit still and fold his hands. And I said, he's 10. Okay. If he didn't want to get dirty,
that would have been me, because I rolled
then
down
I'd
the
be
hill
worried.
all the time as a
Thank
kid.
you. If he didn't want to climb trees and stuff, then I'd be worried. Okay. This is not ADD. This is 10 years old and you're 45 and we got a problem, So
Good points. Yeah. So
I've gone 180 degrees on that. I used to be one of those people, that was like, oh, well, you should get married when you're later and wait for children and blah, and all those things. Now, nope, marry your high school sweetheart, have them at 20, because then when your kids are at an age where they're rambunctious, you can be rambunctious with them, because a lot of what goes on is older parents that are, quite frankly, just too tired to deal with some of the stuff that's going on. Kids and families will parrot the other kids' behavior. So I've had quite a few children where other children in the family pretended autism symptoms because the one child was getting more attention. So, there's a lot in here, there's a lot of nuance to this.
Yeah.
But when I first put the book out, I did book tours and I did 1,000 podcasts. I can't even remember how many. And everybody always asked me the same questions. And then finally, one of them, he said, this is not about autism, but I want to ask you questions, naturopath. Okay. He said, what does health mean to you? Give me a thing of what health is. And I thought, okay. He said, aside from not taking prescriptions, because you're a naturopath, obviously you don't do that. So he goes, what does it mean to you? And I said, you know what it is? It's being able to do anything you want to do based upon whether or not you want to do it, not based upon what you can do. If somebody says to me, do you want to go on a 10-mile hike on Sunday? I can say yes or no based upon whether I want to go or not.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have to worry whether my body will do it, because it will.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, being able to do what you want to do as opposed to what you're able to do, that's freedom.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
That's all I'm after.
Of course, there's a lot of people out there that don't have that freedom. So, but a good diet would help quite a bit. And and LifeWave.
Here come the patches. Hold on.
Yeah, exactly.
Confetti X39. Yay!
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. So how can this has been a magnificent show. I'm so disappointed that you've been doing it for so long and you have such incredible information, and it's not mainstream it's like, wow. But not for want of trying. So good for you. Who knows? Maybe this will be the podcast that really gets you going. You just keep doing it. I know how it is. I did this during COVID. I was like, don't get the shot, and people still did, and on a massive level. And even RFK talks about this. He talked about how they would take all these people in, somebody with a lab coat. So like, hit this button, shock this person if they say the wrong thing. And only 20% of the people didn't do it. 80% did. And that's kind of what we had with the COVID vaccine. 80% did. So, yeah. And again, diet and LifeWave patches could turn all that around. And we've been saying that, but people are like, I don't have a problem.
Right. It's, nothing like waking up in the morning and finding a couple of million social media followers gone, which is what happened to me in the middle of COVID. So, and so many of us, so many of us. But yeah, but this, like you said, but it's so funny, isn't it, that people, I always thought, I used a product called asparagus extract a lot. And people, they will come in and they're taking 6 or 8 prescription medications. And I give them the asparagus extract and they go, well, what's in it? And I'm like, asparagus. but it's like they'll eat a bucket of chicken, or they'll take a prescription medication, or they'll drink something blue, or whatever. But then when you give them like a supplement or a healthy product, they really need to know exactly what's in it and what it's going to do and all of that. And people are very like that with the patches as well. They're like, well, what's it going to do? What I said, there's no medication in the patch. It's not a transdermal patch. It's not going to do anything except help your body work better.
Yeah.
So let's hedge our bets, shall we? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Our world is,
and people are like, well, I don't feel anything. Well, it's only been, a month or a week or whatever. It's like, give it a chance. But it is, and some of us are like, I put it on, it's like, oh my God, this is great. But some people it takes a little bit longer. Maybe it's the same thing with the diet. But if you've had, 10 years of problems and you use the diet for like a week and you're like, well, you said that, well, no, we didn't really say it would be right away. Just do the diet and it'll happen. It's kind of like do the diet. You'll get lean and you'll be able to go do bodybuilding contests. So,
right.
It'll happen. It happens for everybody that does a diet. So, but if you cheat, if you do cake every other day, you think that's okay because you've been, real strict and you're like, I'm not getting lean. Well, what are you following the diet? Well, occasionally I have a piece of cake. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. You can't have cake the whole time. So
I was speaking at a conference one time and I was getting irritated with everybody saying, oh, it's okay. They went to this thing they called 80-20 paleo for a while, where you're supposed to eat well 5 days a week and then whatever you wanted on the weekends. And I was like, this was making me nuts. So I had this glorious keynote presentation put together for something else, but instead I got up in front of all these people and started yelling at them. And I was definitely the mean mommy of paleo at that conference. But I was like, let's use the right word. Okay. So, so person, are you cutting down, have you stopped eating bread? Shauna, I really cut way back on my bread. I mean, I'm eating bread maybe a couple times a week, a little more on the weekends. Okay. And I said, let's use the right word because you're suffering from an addiction. So let's use the right word, heroin. Okay. And of course, everybody laughed. And I'm like, oh, Shauna, I've cut way back on my heroin. I do heroin a couple times a week, a little more on the weekends, and people were laughing. And I'm like, you're laughing, but it's the same thing. It's addiction.
Yeah.
Yep. And the only way to get rid of addictions are to stop doing it.
Totally. And don't go back to doing the addictions because they'll pull you back. Unfortunately,
every time.
People,
Yeah. Erasing Autism is out there.
It's on Barnes and Noble and Amazon,
and it's good. Many other places now too.
I guess they're like back, and I think it's because they're backing off on a lot of this stuff. Is because you were saying that you've been on and off on it. They pull it. But right now, it seems like they're allowing us to come out and talk about stuff again. Free speech. What a concept.
Yeah. And then I'm, of course, still doing all of my mystery diagnosis work as well and all of that. And my entity now is just drshaunayyoung.com. And
drshaunayyoung.com. That's a good one. Easy.
Yeah. I figured. Yeah. So, but we're doing those. And we're just always moving forward and trying to, get everybody as much as we can. I mean, what else are we going to do? We have this and we don't want to turn into Schimmelweisses. So we got to just put it out there as much as we can, right?
Yeah. And that's a lovely website. Let me share it on the screen real quick. Easy peasy.
Et voila.
So still looking great after all these years, and you've been taking the beating, but you keep on ticking. So remember that commercial?
I'm afraid so. Yes.
IMAX, takes a beating but keeps on ticking. So it's amazing how those little things stay in your mind. I haven't said that or heard that for I don't know decades. And so if only we could get people to the point where they could do that with your diet, that would be good.
Well, I would like to leave us with one last word about that.
Lovely.
The last chapter of the book is called Raise the Bar.
Mm.
And a lot of the autism families have been beat up.
Yeah, I bet.
They've tried everything, they've done everything, they've exhausted their finances, they stay in horrible jobs because of the insurance, they do everything, and
Oh,
they get and but then they lose sight of the prize. You know, when people start thinking about, oh, I don't know if I can totally revamp my diet, and I don't know, this is going to be hard. So whenever anybody says that, I always go, okay, look, I want you to do something for me. Close your eyes and go back to your fantasies when you were pregnant. Okay. You're pregnant and you're thinking to yourself, I wonder if my child will be the president of the United States or an astronaut, or he'll take over our store, or she'll get married and have beautiful children, or, you know, and you have all these wonderful fantasies for your child, you know, of what they can do, and all the advantage that's right out in front of them. And a lot of autism parents have gotten to the point that they're willing to try something so that their child throws less tantrums, or so that they get a little bit more verbal, or so they have less nightmares, or, you know, they've dropped the bar. And when you're thinking, I got to completely, totally revamp my diet so that they are a little bit more verbal, then that sounds hard. But if you think I'm going to revamp my diet so that I can go back to those fantasies I had when I was pregnant, that's worth it.
beautiful. Yeah. Raise the bar. Yeah,
Raise
very
the bar.
nice.
Yeah.
Love it. So love this conversation. Thanks so much, Dr. Shauna. Hope people, you know, check out your book. Some people are saying it's on there. They're going to give it away for the Christmas present. So that's great. That'd be a great Christmas present, I think, for anybody, really. So even if they don't have autism, but I don't have autism, but look at the diet, you'll see. It's great.
Right,
Diet.
anyway.
And
Yeah.
yeah, you don't know, maybe because I've noticed you've been a little squirrely lately, and um, you're kind of like a borderline psychopath. So maybe this will help you out.
Let's hope
We
so.
would like to send this to a lot of our leaders, right? So could you
Oh,
do this diet,
I'm
please?
so glad you said that instead of me. I was just, it was wanting to come out.
All right. Well, thanks so much, and you know, best of luck with your work, and maybe we should have another show and you know, discuss when your cells blow up.
I have so many theories on so many things. So yeah.
Very good. Okay. Yeah, we'll stay in touch. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.